It's not enough to listen to Bad Bunny. It's not enough to watch Narcos. It's not enough to eavesdrop on your neighbors. Okay? You need to listen to a podcast. Okay? Buenos, me llamo daljiimarax. If you are new here, we learn in Spanish together. Yeah, together. Let's get into it. This podcast has helped me with my conversational and understanding, like my comprehension so much, and it is called Coffee Break Spanish. What's so great about this specific podcast is that the lessons are super duper short, so it's not overwhelming. It's not like you gotta listen to a whole hour podcast, somebody speaking Spanish. We already having troubles being disciplined. The last thing we need is a super long lesson. That's why it's called Coffee Break. It's meant to be short, digestible, and get to the point. Okay, so I'm gonna show you how I use it to actually like learn my Spanish, and not just I'm just listening to this podcast every single day. Because I mean, you can listen to anything in Spanish. I don't mean you learning nothing. Alright, this I think is the most important to like retain the information that I'm learning, and I listen to the same exact lesson. Like I don't skip to the next episode unless I listen to it at least 3 times. And here's how I do it. So I listen to Coffee Break Spanish podcast at least twice a day. At least. Sometimes 3, but at least twice. 1 in the morning and 1 sometime in the afternoon. And in the morning session, I try to do it at the same time while I'm doing the same activity. That's usually while I'm walking my dog. So while I'm walking my dog for 3 days in a row, I will listen to the same episode, so that I am repeatedly hearing those words, those phrases, that conversation, how to decipher what's the conversation is going to be about, because I'm training my brain, like that muscle memory in my head, that like this is what comes next, this is what they're going to talk about, this is what we're going to do, and I'm doing it while I'm doing the same activity, so I'm kind of have that expectation and I know what to listen for, versus every single day I try to listen to it at a different time with a different lesson. That's like, you're not going to remember anything that way. You're not going to remember anything useful that you're going to be able to apply in conversation. Okay, the next afternoon I may listen to the next episode, or maybe I'll repeat that same one, but I try at least 3 days in a row, not 3 times in a row, not listen to the same lesson in the morning for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, but listen it 3 days in a row. Give it a little bit of time to digest and think about it. You know what I'm saying? So while I'm, it's important that I'm listening to it 3 days in a row, I'm also trying to remember vocabulary or grammar that I'm hearing in this podcast, and I go and try and write a sentence in my Spanish journal. I have a Spanish journal that I just use to like jot down notes or things that I want to learn, that I currently am learning, whatever. So for example, I listened to a lesson on Coffee Break Spanish, and they were asking people about like what do they do at the summer, and 2 words I remembered is la playa, agua, and mis hermanos, because in the story the person was talking about when he was a kid, every summer him and his siblings would go to like the beach and they would play in the water for hours around the day. So I tried to use those 3 words and make a sentence out of it. Or I try to, like, when I'm listening to other conversations about categories that have to do with going to the beach or siblings, family, I'm listening for those words. I'm listening for those cues that I heard into those podcasts. So trying to like remember words, not trying to remember every single word that's happening in the conversation, because that's never going to happen until you're fluent in the language. You can't get fluent in the language trying to know everything at once. You got to break it down, okay? So by me, like, okay, I remember this word, I remember that word, I remember that word. Let me go write it in a sentence. Let me go see if if those words are repeated somewhere else. In a movie I'm currently watching, in a song I'm listening to. Bad Bunny has a song called Después de la Playa. He's talking about the beach in that song. So am I going to hear the other words that I learned in that podcast? Like trying to like apply what I'm learning to my everyday life and the other resources I'm using to learn Spanish. Okay, that's how I'm going to retain it. It's not like I said, it's not enough to just try to listen to it and just remember it from scratch, because you're not going to do that. It's not going to happen for you. Next, what I love about this podcast is they are asking you to repeat things, and you have to actually repeat and engage with the podcast for it to be helpful. So if they say "Cómo te llamas?", you can't just say listen to the other person repeating themselves. You say "Me llamo Daji." You have to engage with it. So by doing that, I'm hearing myself speak Spanish. So I'm understanding what I sound like when I speak Spanish. And to be able to speak Spanish, you gotta speak it. So when they say "Cómo te llamas?" ¿Cuál es tu nombre? ¿De dónde eres? ¿Qué pasó? ¿Cómo estás? Whatever. You repeat it. You answer them. They can't hear you, but you can hear yourself. So you're hearing, what you sound like, and it's actually helping you, like, with the different accents, because this is a Spaniard accents and the way that they teach Spanish on this particular podcast. And a lot of the resources I'm using are Mexican, but I'm learning, with the Spaniard one, the different accents and what that sounds like. Como te llamas versus como te llama. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like hearing the different accents and being able to repeat and hear myself and hear them is super helpful. Okay, it's like I said, you gotta listen to podcasts, you gotta be interactive, and you gotta take that information and you gotta apply it to your world. Okay, that's how you're gonna be fluent in Spanish. That's how we gonna be fluent in Spanish. This is how we do it.